Assalamu alaikum. Dear Honourable Consulate General, Vice Consulate, Honourable Speakers and Honourable Guests, thank you for allowing me the time to speak on Kashmir. May Allah's peace, mercy and blessings be upon you. Myself, I am the founder and chair of the British Kashmiri Women Council and vice chair for APWA. I feel blessed with two privileged identities, British and Kashmiri. The events in Kashmir over the past decades caused great pain, from stories of humiliation to chilling accounts of torture. Kashmiris have gone through grievances and great suffering. The horrors of Kashmir are not new. This is not a contemporary conflict, but a genocide that can be traced back to the times of the British Raj from 1933. However, since the explosion of the separatist movement in 1989, over 100,000 of people have been killed in the battle for control of the area. And we share the grief, the sorrow, and the sense of loss of every mother, father, and child. We are now in 2022, and it pains me to say this, but with time, Kashmir has become a forgotten struggle. I am deeply saddened by the silence from the international community. The silence is deafening and sickening. No words can bring solace for the suffering of Kashmiri people. Kashmiri women and children are the victims under Indian occupation and brutality in the forgotten land of Kashmir. As we all gather here today with heavy hearts, our Kashmiri brothers and sisters have been imprisoned in their own homes and silently witness many massacres, genocide and ethnic cleansing on a daily basis, all happening for decades in a country whose beauty can never be explained in words. It's hard to imagine these horrors from the comfort of our homes. I feel deeply grieved and feel a duty to stand up and at least try to do what I can do in educating and raising awareness. It is now widely accepted that while women seldom create or initiate conflict, they, along with the children and the elderly, are often its chief victims and sufferers. Nowhere is this more true in Kashmir. Yes, despite this, women's suffering has until recently barely been acknowledged. And the Kashmir conflict, for example, has generated a vast amount of an analytical and historical literature. Very little of it actually mentions women. Yet today in Kashmir, there are large numbers of women who are identified as half-widows. These are women whose husbands are assumed dead, but there is no proof to show that. Widows, mothers who've lost their sons, or those whose daughters have been raped, young women who dare not step out of the house, women who have been pushed out of employment by the fear and uncertainty created by this conflict. Mothers go through the horrors of witnessing their children going through deprivation and worst affected by violence. Children are subjected to bomb attacks on their homes and in their schools. Some are kidnapped, killed, sexually abused, or recruited as child soldiers. And because of violence and armed conflicts, these children have suffered on their journey more than any of us can imagine. Most of them grow up traumatized from having witnessed or suffered violence and sexual exploitation. Communities suffer enormous material damage, such as the loss of lives, homes, schools, health facilities, livelihood, and the infrastructure due to armed conflict, especially women and children, often forgotten in the conflict. War and violence not only disrupts social cohesion, but wrecks the very foundation of communities, and the burden of the work falls mainly on the women and children, especially orphans, because when their parents are killed, their fathers or their elder brothers go missing or are in jails. In the war-torn Kashmir, described as paradise on earth by writers and poets, is actually hell on earth. The children are growing up with violence as part of their daily lives, with no reference of peace. This affects the lives of so many women, children and their families in loss of security, income, schooling, displacement, physical, psychological trauma of the violence, abuse, neglect, fear and torture, which is constant in their innocent minds, with no peace of mind. Withdrawal symptoms are common among the Kashmiri women and children. Amongst children as young as 3 years old, this condition worsens with detrimental effects, having major impact on the survival, development, mental health and overall well-being of the children, and the adolescents with social disruptions. Mothers have the onerous task of raising these children in harsh and fearful environments, and there is the feeling of anger, mistrust, helplessness and insecurity, witnessing kidnaps, rapes, abuse, confrontation with security forces. So most schools are situated by checkpoints and camps, which creates a threatening atmosphere of crossfires, bombing and shelling, and this turns into angry adolescents being phobic of army personnel. Malnutrition, as well as depression, anxiety and stress, also has an impact on health and the mental state of mind. Mothers are unable to remain positive, and their children can be denied love and affection because mothers are unable to remain positive, and their children are denied the empathy, the happy environment where there is, where there is no empathy, there's no happiness, and they're only surrounded by darkness of war and conflict and the intimidating presence of troops with guns. Kashmiri children live in fear for their families, worrying as children. Young girls are unable to continue the education due to the negative effects. Girls are discouraged or even forbidden from enrolling in schools because the parents fear the well-being of their daughters and their sons due to the negative impacts of the war, where so many have gone missing. And the ongoing turmoil has taken a paradigm shift when children and adolescents start to express aggression by getting stones, pelting stones, and bearing the risk of getting beaten, injured, or even shot. And there is indescribable levels of frustration and anger among the trauma generation, who have hardly seen a minute of complete peace or tranquility in their lives. Loss of childhood when they should have freedom, fun and be playing games instead of suffering stress, which has a detrimental impact on the mental health and education. Unfortunately, children have been deprived of their childhood, education and livelihood. They've been robbed of their childhood. They are more entangled in the conflict than they are to their education, and the blame lies largely on the state and the political climate. This uncertainty affects their personalities. This political socialization over the decades creates fear, psychosis, creating uncertainty in their minds. Therefore, the wealth of the nation does not lie in its economic and natural resources, but it lies in the kind of quality of its children and youth. It is they who will be the creators and the shapers of the nation tomorrow. And because the children of today will be the adults, they'll be the leaders, the activists of tomorrow, the quality and personality will determine the kind of destiny that nation will have. And it has put the next generation of Kashmir at stake while the children in other parts of the world enjoy the privilege of being children, Kashmiri children have been robbed of their childhood, treated like criminals. The ill behaviour towards Kashmiri children has ruined them physically, mentally, as well as psychologically, affecting their behaviour through no fault of their own. They are lacking the mental skills that facilitate growth. Growing up with chronic violence in their lives means they reach adulthood and they will have a perception of violence, and in a way they will look at that as acceptable, an acceptable mean of resolving ethnic, religious and political differences. Kashmiri women and children are found to have general anxiety symptoms. They are apprehensive and insecure, phobic of army personnel, like I said. Depression is a major problem which has been on the rise for the past few decades in the valley. And the feeling of insecurity is common among women and children. Women in general have suffered from sexual harassment and rapes by armed personnel. They are unable to come out of this aura of suppression. A study done by Jong et al. 2008 revealed that Kashmiri women are among the worst sufferers of sexual violence in the world. Interestingly, the figure is much higher than that of Sierra Leone, Sri Lanka and Chechnya. Armed conflict in Kashmiri people has very negative impact on all inhabitants of the valley, especially the women who see the most serious effects on their children. It has engrossed their whole life and hampers their overall development, be it physical or psychological. It has led the loss of their values and has affected the structural changes in society. Children have lost the feeling of being secure. The security is gone. Even while being with their mothers, they feel they have to protect their mothers when it should be the other way around. Mothers are witnessing the conflict their children are facing, and they see their tender hearts filled with anger, frustration, and losing their peace of mind. The peace situation in Kashmir reflects the tragic fate of children who are lacking the necessary social and mental skills that facilitate growth. For example, a toy gun is a favourite toy of the children of the valley. And the sole reason for the unconditional love for a toy gun is the hatred that has been planted deep into their minds, leading to radicalization, losing their childhood, their innocence, their hope. The issue needs to be settled and resolved so these children can be taken out of this hellfire. This deadly conflict and ongoing dispute has drained so many precious innocent lives, inviting human rights violations for more than 6 decades. Driving the conventional nuclear arms race between 3 countries, India, Pakistan, China, a ticking time bomb, as Michelle described, that urgently needs international council to intervene. They seem to intervene everywhere else in the world. New modern history bears testimony that the British have endeavoured to recognise the people's sovereign rights, and the struggle of the masses shaped destinies, and we have seen independent nations emerge. And I make reference to the great Nelson Mandela and apartheid in South Africa. No one ever thought that this could be eliminated, yet it was witnessed by the entire universe. And more recently, the world observed Ukraine and Russia, and how mobilization took place in bringing countries together to boycott Russia in a matter of a few days. We need Kashmiri and non-Kashmiri diaspora to continue to be consistent in supporting the human rights for Kashmiris. It seems Ukrainians are more deserving of sympathy than Kashmiris. Why do these United Security Council members of the world remain silent about Kashmir? Another one is the Commonwealth Games. India gets invited to participate with over 200 athletes. Women on the international level all over the world enjoying the freedom. However, where are the Kashmiri women? Where are their rights? Why are they denied? Where is the justice and where are these champions for democracy? Where are these feminists that claim to be defenders for women's rights? Why is it, when it comes to Kashmiri women, the world is suddenly silent and turns blind to the atrocities? What steps are the governments taking to stop any of these atrocities and human rights violations in Kashmir? Britain left a wound in India that has left Kashmiri women in the hands of brutal forces, and they are left to bear the pain and grief and continue to suffer in silence. These wounds they left need to be healed and resolved. We live in Britain, and in the name of humanity, I urge everyone to help receive this, resolve this without delay, because together, with our voices, we can strengthen the unheard voices. Our goal is to promote awareness of the fundamental rights and freedoms of the Kashmiri people. God has given us the ability to take action, and by speaking frankly and honestly, we must accomplish their right to freedom. And this goes the same for all over the world where human rights are violated, so we can bring back humanity, love, peace and equality. Thank you for listening. Stay blessed. Ameen.